Alright guys, today I have a review for you on a very nice EDC fixed blade put out by Bark River Knives. This is the Bark River Featherweight Fox River. And just to start off, I'm going to show a size comparison so you know what I mean by EDC fixed blade if maybe this is the first fixed blade you're looking at, which this is my first EDC fixed blade, and actually high quality fixed blade other than Amora. So here you have the Spyderco Delica 4. This is the new Wharncliffe model. So you can see that if you look on the sizes here, they are just about the same size. You can see that the Delica has a little bit more handle, but overall, they're the same size. The Bark River packs more cutting edge, which is really nice, because I'll explain a little bit later. So I'm going to leave this out real quick as I pull out a couple other examples. This is my regular Sebenza, and it is the same size as small Sebenza 21s and small and cozies. So if you own one of these, you can expect the Bark River to be just a half an inch more, or half an inch bigger. And then maybe something a little bit larger. The Spyderco Swish Buoy is about an inch longer. So there you go, there's a quick size comparison for you. And let's get into the review. So as I do with most of my reviews, if not all, we start with the blade. I'm going to start with the blade grind first. This is a convex ground knife. If you don't know what a convex ground knife is, basically a zero ground knife is a knife that has no secondary bevel. It just goes straight to the cutting edge. It's like a Scandi grind if you're familiar with that. A convex ground, however, is similar, but instead of being straight like this, it's curved, which provides a lot less friction and makes it a really nice slicer. That, paired with the thickness of this, which is, I think, the same thickness as the Delica 4, so if you have a Delica, you'll have an idea of how thin this knife is. Coupled with that, or coupling those two, makes this one of the best slicers you'll ever have. I have really been happy with this. This is one of the only knives that I've felt didn't need to be sharpened by me, because I had looked at how to sharpen convex ground knives and I got this and I was like, this doesn't need sharpening. And it's really easy to touch up. I have put this knife through hell and I have just stropped it up and it's good to go. So that also gives it a lot of toughness. It's going to be really hard to chip this knife, which I'm happy for, because as I continue, you'll know why. The Elmax done by Bark River, there's no problems. I have no problems with it. It held a really nice edge, took a nice fine edge. It hasn't rusted on me, which is kind of surprising, because I don't think I've done anything to keep that from happening. I haven't put any oil or EDCI solution on it yet. So there you go. If you have any problems about Elmax, don't worry, it's good to go. It's takes a nice fine edge and stuff. All right. So the blade shape, I really like. It's first off, it's very attractive. It's kind of your traditional drop point. But what I really like about it is it has belly, but not a significant amount. It's not like your Swish Buoy that has a ton of belly, and if you need to use that point on anything on the cutting board, you kind of have to go at a straight down type angle to cut. You have to do a much more angled cut, which makes it really nice for having to do those cuts. And I found that it's really nice being paired with a blade, well, maybe like your Norseman, that kind of, you use that secondary point a lot. You use the recurve, but you don't really have that much belly. I mean, you kind of do on the tip, but you know, if you had to do something a little bit more food preppy or the required belly, then you could whip out your Bark River Featherweight, and you know, that gets rid of the problem. They complement each other nicely, which is really what I've started to do. I've started letting my knives complement each other. If I carry something like the Swish Buoy, I'll carry something like the Delica, because they are two very different blade shapes for different purposes. So that's one definitely a pro that I would give the Bark River. The blade shape is very easy to complement, and it definitely is an excellent design itself. I love the finish they put on this knife. The 600 grit looks very, very fine, very nice. Not your everyday satin that you may see on like a Spyderco, or even maybe a Sabenza satin. See, it's got a different type of glow about it. So, one con I have to point out is these are hand ground knives, which may be a pro to you. This, however, I don't think would be. You can see that because it's hand ground, it's not exactly symmetrical. It's not exactly symmetrical on the sides. It's not a big deal. It doesn't hinder its function that much. It may make sharpening this area a little tricky, and cutting might not be the best down there, even though I don't know many knives that are really particularly good at cutting at the base of the edge. But, you know, it's something to keep in mind, because sometimes maybe they'll have a worse example. The first production on this knife really doesn't bother me. This is really kind of the first knife that it hasn't bothered me on. It's very discreet, very tastefully done. So you don't have to dread getting one of the first production ones. In fact, I actually kind of like the first production on this one because it's so tastefully done. Moving on to the handle, I want to talk about ergonomics real quick. My favorite grip on this knife isn't a Saber grip, but kind of a sideways Saber grip. You really don't change the way you hold it. You just kind of change the knife in your hand. And this is extremely comfortable. Like, you have no idea. Oh my gosh, it's so comfortable. It's like you got Play-Doh and you just squished it in your hand. Sorry about hitting the tripod there, but you know, I hope you get the picture of how what I'm talking about. So that's really good for, you know, these type cuts. So it's very comfortable there. It's very comfortable in the Saber grip. I use the hammer grip a lot with this knife, and it worked very nicely as well. So this is just an overall very ergonomic knife. I think that has to do with the kind of the Coke bottle contouring they've got here, which let's talk about that and move on to the fit and finish of the handle. And it's got a very square handle, which shows the finish and the fit that it went through. The red liners are all the consistent thickness, all extremely flush, with the scales, which are flush with the tang, all finished very nicely. But you can feel this knife as much as you want, and it feels like one material in your hand if you close your eyes. The pins are also perfectly flush with the handle, as well as a lanyard tube, and the pins have kind of a nice polish on them. This particular one is green canvas micarta. There are different handle scales, of course, you can get with this knife. You can get G10, you can get micarta, you can get wood. Personally, I would go for the micarta or the G10 just because that's more suited for EDC purposes in my mind. But, you know, to each his own. So let's move on to the abuse and the performance of this knife. In EDC use, like I said, this works very nice. It's one of my favorite slicers. It zips through cardboard like nothing I have ever owned before. Even the Swish Bowie, with its super high flat ground blade that's really nice and thin using perfect steel, is not a match for this knife. I mean, there's really no other way to put it. You will not find a better slicer than this knife. I haven't yet. But it's good for harder outdoorsy use also. So a couple weeks ago, me and a friend went camping. We went to a state park, we pitched our tent up somewhere, and we had brought a roll of sausage and some eggs in a cooler, and that's what was going to be our breakfast, and we did the same with hot dogs and stuff. I normally have a Mora cheap fixed blade, you know, for wood processing. Unfortunately, I forgot that, and it had just rained, so all the wood was wet and really wasn't going to be helpful for using a fire. Luckily, we had brought logs for starting a fire, but we had no way of getting, good shavings. You can't just light a log on fire. You have to have that kind of ripple effect. Anyway, this was the knife that I had, so I thrashed on this knife like I wouldn't before. A log about this thick, I just kind of went on the edges, and I cut through a good 1.5 feet, like a log that was 1.5 feet tall. I batoned through that sucker with this thing, and I did that several times, as well as getting wood shavings and doing feather sticks to start a fire. And it worked beautifully. I mean, it's not going to be as good as a 4-inch fixed blade or a 5-inch fixed blade because it doesn't have as much mass and as much meat. But this is what I mean by the steel, the LMAX. It held a really nice edge. And all I've done is drop this, and it's still really sharp. But it took some thrashing. It batoned, and that's not something I would normally do with, a Delica-sized fixed blade. It's definitely something I wouldn't do with a Delica. But this rose to the occasion, and I'm really impressed with that. As far as the feather sticks go, with the convex grind, it bit into the wood very nicely. It got some really nice fine shavings, and I used this a lot that week camping. I had a stick, or I found a walking stick that was pretty solid, but it had really rough bark on the top, and I used this to shave the bark. That's not super tough, but I went those whole 3 or 4 days, however long we were out there, using it a ton every day, and it held up just fine. No complaints, no chipping on the end or the edge of the knife. I mean, it's convex ground, I wouldn't expect that, but there were no hang-ups, and it just performed really nicely. So last thing I want to talk about is the sheath. I think I've talked about everything I can on the knife. Hopefully I've convinced you to buy one, because it's definitely worth that. It comes in a leather sheath. You can get an aftermarket one from DLT Trading. I don't mind this one though, because I have carried this on my belt. I did most of the time I was camping, but normal EDC use, I carry this in my pocket. If you're looking at me, I kind of have this on the inside. My crotch is over here and my other pocket's over here. Anyway, I kind of carry this on the inside with a folder on the outside. It's normally how that goes, and I have no problems with that. It doesn't get in the way sitting down or anything. It's very comfortable, and it's very concealable. Not so much concealable. It's very, it doesn't draw attention to yourself. However, carrying this on the belt is still really nice. It distributes the length very nicely on the belt. It's not going to work on like super thick belts, but it worked on my belt just fine. And I think for the majority of the belts, it's going to work easily. You can see that it is not water resistant from the factory. You have to do aftermarket stuff. I haven't. I kind of like the weathered look of it. Of course, if it gets soaking wet, then I'm toast. But at this point, I think it's fine. And so that's the sheath for you. It's very conservative as far as size goes. You just compare it to like a closed Norseman, and you can see that it is bigger, but as far as what you would expect, and as far as comparing a fixed blade to a folder, it's not that much bigger. So there you go. That is my full review on the Bark River. There's not as much to talk about as folding knives. If you watch my folding knife reviews, you know that I can go on for 30 minutes talking about it, because there's so much more that can go wrong and so much more attention to detail that needs to be taken on folding knives than on fixed blades. But overall, I couldn't ask for a better EDC fixed blade. The blade shape is perfect, the grind is perfect for slicing, the handle is extremely comfortable and pretty and really attractive. This is green canvas micarta, which kind of has an OD look, which is also extremely attractive. And it comes in great steel that holds up well, and it's got a nice blade shape. So it's finished perfectly. I can't really, other than this kind of plunge grind issue, there's really not any improvements that I could think of, and there's really nothing that if you took the bark river away and you put someone's custom logo, I would completely believe that this is a custom knife, 100%. So I suggest you go out and buy one, or at least ponder and think about how much better your life would be if you owned one. So that's it for this video. Check out some more. I'm having more reviews come out. If you like spinners, I'm having that. But stay tuned for a review on like my Amazon that I just got, and like the Delica 4. And plus I'm having some customer knives come in. Actually a buddy of mine, I'm sharpening some of his knives. So look forward to seeing some of those. And I will catch y'all in the next video. Give a thumbs up if you like this video, and check out my Instagram. It's the same as my YouTube name, @JDubKnives, for awesome cool knife pics and porn and stuff. Alright, knife porn that is, not actual porn. You won't see any of that. You'll see knife porn. Anyway, I'm going to sign off for the last time. Bye guys.